Welcome to What You Missed When You Didn't Exist. I am Corbett and I am 54.
And I'm Lucy, and I'm 25.
So old.
You or me?
Both. As I said before, this is What You Missed When You Didn't Exist, and in this show we talk about things that happened from 1970 to the year 2000, the time when Lucy was not existing,
Yes.
much like she is now.
What do you
Kind of nice to exist, I will admit. Enjoy your time while you can. And you know what, Lucy, this time around, I am going to be talking to you on a very fair footing about being an English teacher. Ooh, yeah.
Very fair.
Very much you're going to have input on this, I expect, because this is one of those things that I didn't actually realize. I thought it happened much later. I didn't realize it happened so close to 1974. 1973 and 74, and then again in 83, and then again in 2011. But
Hey,
believe it or not,
that's in my time.
Well, I know this is hard to believe. There are people who do not like books.
No way. Are you so serious?
I know. Unbelievable in every single way of the word. But in 1973, was it Minnesota? I want to say it was Minnesota. No, it was North Dakota. There was a English teacher, a 26-year-old English teacher who assigned the book Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. And you don't have to act that surprised. You read it all recently.
Well, I did, yes. But I think I know where it's going.
The teacher assigned it to a high school class to read. It's a fairly short book, but Kurt Vonnegut had a very tormented life, to be fair, about his growing up and dealing with stuff. Needless to say, the class, actually, from what I read, the feedback was the class overall was like, this is good. This is a really good book. With the exception of one child who thought it was offensive, told their parents, and pretty much everything you'd expect to happen after that happens.
Yeah.
The big moment was when the principal threw all 30 some odd books into the school's furnace. Make sure nobody would ever read it, because you know what really helps a book? Being set on fire.
Yes. Of course.
Somebody should write a book about that.
Oh, yeah. Schools have furnaces? Like, side note. Like, because it wasn't a...
Well, it's North Dakota. It's cold in the winter. You're gonna want to have some kind of centralized heating.
But someone had to manually man the furnace?
Yeah, typically you'd have a maintenance guy who keeps it running.
That's so crazy.
And back then it probably was all wood.
And books.
Well, wood or coal. And books. So terrible. I think the one cool thing about this, and that's a pretty broad statement, but the one cool thing is Kurt Vonnegut, the author of the book, wrote the principal and told him, you have the right to burn this because I was a veteran and lived this, so you could burn it. And it goes into a lot more details, and I will recommend, if you get a chance, look it up online. There's full written versions of it and discussions about it in every single way. It's a really well-written letter because he's a good author. What are you going to do?
That's true.
And just to cover a little bit of background on Kurt Vonnegut, I was
going to say, I want to know the trauma he experienced, because this book is traumatic in a way that someone is not coping with it in therapy, and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to write about it and laugh about it the whole time, and it'll be fun.
Well, he does have a weird take on stuff. I hate to say it, reading his bio was just enough to like, wow, I really relate to this guy, which is sad because he has had some horrific stuff happen. And that's the nicest way I can put it. He went to Cornell University. Now, I don't know if you know where that is, but it's a pretty well-known university. He was in Cornell in 1940, I want to say, which I don't know if you're aware of time. But back then there was a big war and everybody was going off to war except for people who were in college or had, some kind of 4F exemption. He was in Cornell and put out an article that was considered satirical, and they didn't appreciate it, and he got kicked. So he immediately joined the U.S. Army. He didn't wait to get conscripted, I don't believe. He was worried he was going to get drafted, so he's like, screw this, I'll just go join, because everybody was ready to go fight the war anyway.
Yeah.
So in 1943, he goes into the Army, gets trained. He becomes like a howitzer, like an artillery guy,
Okay.
and gets shipped off to go fight in the war. He fought as a support crew for the D-Day invasion. So he wasn't specifically on the beach, but he was probably part of people ready to fire out toward the beach or make sure to get information back to and from. And D-Day is a pretty big one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people dying, a lot of things happening that are terrible. Now, okay, let's jump a little further ahead. And then he survives D-Day and he gets to go on leave to go home for Mother's Day, where he found out his mother just overdosed the day before he got there.
Wow.
Yeah. So he goes back to in Europe and he's part of the Battle of the Bulge almost right after. And the Battle of the Bulge, so you know, is one of the biggest pushes of the Allied forces pushing into the European front. And it was a pretty bloody fought war. It was Hitler's push back against it. Well, Hitler and Mussolini's push back against it.
Yeah.
And he got caught with 50 other soldiers, at least, and taken to Dresden
Yes.
for a camp there. Now, for anybody who's a war buff or a World War II guy, they already know the word Dresden and know what's about to happen.
Yep, it's bad.
Oh, now you know? This is the really bad part.
I
because
found about it
Dresden-
in the book. He wrote about it. Anyways.
Okay. Well, you got to learn it firsthand, which is an experience he puts into Slaughterhouse 5 directly.
Yes.
When he was put into the camp, he was put into what's called a working camp. He literally worked in a slaughterhouse, a butchery type place. And he also made milk. No, it wasn't milk. It was syrup. Or no, malt.
Yes, malt.
He was put to work on a regular basis, and then the bombing of Dresden happened. And he really does describe Dresden as a beautiful city. It's one of his first big cities to ever visit in his life because he's a small town guy.
Yes.
The bombing of Dresden is probably, I don't know if I'd even want to rank it. The only reason it's outranked by the top two bombings, of course, is because those were nuclear bombs. But the other two big ones I would say would be the bombing of Dresden and the firebombing of Tokyo. And these were like just literally the entire Air Force in the air dropping every bomb possible to devastate the town. And it was horrific because they literally dropped them on every single, it was like 8 square miles of devastation in the center of the town. It was brutal. So anyway, he survives all of this and deals with a lot of personal infighting in the camp because people are trying to make things, they're trying to fight back or fight each other or just whatever they want to do. And you kind of get some of this in Slaughterhouse 5, the book. And he comes back, and like a lot of people who come back from war, he has this trauma that he's dealing with. And he deals with it through a lot of books and short stories. He starts writing right away, I think like right after, because he comes back, gets married.
He must, because his book gets published in 1967.
Well, he's actually had several books published up to that point. He works for General Electric for a little while,
Yeah.
which is in another book where he talks a lot about that. I believe it was Cat's Cradle. I want to say Cat's Cradle. And a lot of them are very science fiction-y. He likes talking about other worlds, although he's really talking about our world every time. So anyway, he writes a book called Slaughterhouse 5. I don't know if I can summarize it very well. It's a very confusing story because it jumps around. And it goes with the assumption that time isn't linear. And if you can wrap your head around that one, in other words, you could be born and die in the same breath because it's all just part of the story.
Yeah.
Actually, you just read it. If you were to write a short synopsis, how would you approach it? Because it felt like it was a scrapbook of his life because of the aliens. And I forget the name of the aliens. They have a really weird name.
Oh my gosh, wait. I have it highlighted somewhere.
Taladarians?
The Trefladarians or something.
Yeah, something like that.
It's this long, ridiculous name. Honestly, based on how much of Kurt Vonnegut's life you told me, it's basically his life, but also he gets abducted by aliens at some point and lives out a separate life. So it's kind of a mix of those scenes jumping around all the time, which was so annoying. I hated it so much.
You and your mother.
Well, it's like he was trying to write a movie and it became a movie. I'm sure it would make more sense as a movie, but as a book, it's so confusing because it doesn't say like, hey, we're shifting to this time period. Now you just get this introduction of new characters.
Well, it doesn't explain all that until the end.
Yeah.
In the end, it explains why. But you have to kind of go through it and like, wait, now we're back in World War II? Why is he living out his life in the 60s? What happened with this? And how is that happening?
Yeah.
And who's this new girl who showed up? I think the Aborigines of Australia have a concept of life that's very similar, that your life is like a book and you could flip back and forth to whatever parts you want to watch. or be part of, or
Mm,
whatever, when you're alive and when you're dead and when you're alive are kind of almost all the same thing.
yeah.
It's really very unusual, but at the same time, I think that was Kurt Vonnegut's take on it. And he, honestly, in that letter he wrote to the principal, he seemed very much. Actually, did you read that letter? I don't remember if you did or
I
not.
did not. I did not get the chance to. I was trying to
Oh,
cram this book.
I'm sorry.
Cram it.
I should have just had you watch the movie. It's faster.
No, the books
But I
are
know you.
always better than the movie.
That's probably true. It would make just about it is jumpy, like jumping from one thing to another until you get to the end and go, "Oh, that's why it all happens that way." So, there's that.
Yeah, it seems like Kurt Vonnegut really needs to go to therapy because it seems like all of this trauma he's experienced in his life, he shoves into a book. And it's kind of that moment of when you have something traumatic happen to you, you just tend to relive it because you're trying to figure out what happened or what could change or that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
it just seems like he gets caught in so many of those loops because something triggers a memory and he's like, oh, let me go and talk about this. Let me go and think about this because it just triggered me. And so it's so jumpy, so traumatic. It kind of idolizes war, which is interesting. And I could see why it got banned because it talks about some very, very mature things.
You can see why it got banned.
I can
Do you agree
see.
with it getting banned?
Well, you said that there were different reasons as to why it got banned earlier, I
Well, why it
think.
got burned. Specifically 1973 was it getting burned, which
Yes.
is a really big difference because in 1983 it was just banned in a big way. There was I think it was in New York. There was a library that pulled it and several other books, and it was one of the ones listed on the top because of the burning that happened 10 years before. I think the burning was more fascinating, not so much because of the burning, but because the author himself wrote to the principal, and it was like obvious in the paper that the principal had no idea what the book was about
Oh, that's
and just went by
funny.
what the parent said, that it's obscene and we need to destroy it. No need to discover this for myself. And
Mm.
even in his letter, Kurt Vonnegut, points out like this does deal with mature topics because it deals with life, and we all deal with life. Which I don't think he was pushing it on little kids. I know, like later versions of this, it's changed to middle school or putting it into elementary school hands. Like that's high schoolers, and I will admit, high schoolers, you're bordering on going to college, and
Yeah, but I would
it's
say
close.
junior or senior year. I would not give this to freshmen or sophomores.
All I know is high school for sure. I
Yeah.
don't have the details of all of it, but I do remember the general beginnings of book burnings. And we've talked about like the satanic panic and stuff in the past. And this is kind of in that zone of we don't want our kids to grow up faster than they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was him kind of dealing with a lot of life.
Yeah. It's kind of a lot. Like, there's an entire couple pages about different ways to torture people. And apparently, the main character, Billy's like, that sounds interesting. I love thinking about different ways to torture people. And you're like, what? There's like deep sex talks with the aliens and being like, here's how sex happens and here's how life works with the Tralfamadorians. That's the name of the
Oh,
aliens.
okay.
There's a picture of breasts in here just for funsies.
Well, you've got to know what they look like.
I guess, because no one knows.
I will say one thing I did find offensive. Well, not offensive. I found like I don't know if I could handle it. Is he's essentially in a zoo. I
Yes.
mean, it doesn't. I mean, well, I think he mentions it at one point. Yeah, it's kind of in that zone of we're just gonna watch and observe everything you do, and like, weird.
Yeah, very weird. Very strange. They're in a
But he
zoo.
went from war into a corporate environment, so a lot of his stuff kind of stems from pointing out how the corporate world is a little broken and war is usually not great. I'm kind of surprised you got glorifying war because most of his stuff is very much antithetical to it.
Well, at the very beginning, there was a line where I think he just talks about the fact that we see all this violence in books and in movies, and he himself is talking about it in his books, and it also became a movie. And so I think his mom was saying that wars were partly encouraged by books and movies. And in a sense, I think that's his opinion, is that wars are romanticized by books and movies. So not he's
Mm.
romanticizing it, but the idea of war being something that is romanticized. Because it's one of the biggest genres, I would say, among male readers is talking about
Mm.
war and violence.
That is kind of a standard. Once you hit 35, you pretty much have to become a World War II buff.
Pretty much. Except you read books about truckers, so.
Yeah, I know. That's me, though. I'm weird. I mean, I presume if you threw that out there, you would get immediately thrown on a list.
Oh my
Because you're
gosh.
dealing with 7th graders, though.
Yes. No, it's hard, and I can kind of relate to the 26-year-old teaching vibes, because you're just trying to get kids to engage with a text, and
Mhm.
getting something that draws their attention in by something wild, like talking about sex with aliens. I'm sure that would definitely get your kids to pay attention in class. Obviously. But again, different age groups need different kinds of, I guess, stimulation. Seems like a weird way to
Mhm.
put it, but engagement.
Yeah, you're getting them excited about reading.
Yes. Yeah. So I think overall, it is a good book. I think it would be really fun to read and talk about in college. I don't know if I would give it to high schoolers unless they were maybe in junior, senior year of high school.
Well, you're also looking at a different generation.
Yeah,
Because then it was common to, well, beat your kids.
this is true.
It was way more common to swear up and down with them in the room. And for some reason, that was really becoming commonplace about that time. I think one of his statements in the letter was something along the lines of, this is the way you're brought up and this is what you see all the time. And I don't know if that's common now, but back then, yeah, I kind of agree with him.
I wonder if it's common in a different way, though, because I think kids are still learning to swear and still engage with these different topics through social media, not necessarily
Mhm.
through their parents. So I think it's a little bit different. But I also think that Kurt Vonnegut should have definitely gone to therapy.
Sorry.
His like whole common joke throughout the whole thing is like, oh yeah, so and so died. He's like, oh, so it goes. Like, yep, that happens.
Yeah.
Dude, process your trauma. Go to therapy.
Again, I can relate to this guy. It's sad, but it's easier to laugh and joke it up because otherwise you just cry all the time because life is horrible.
Yeah,
But there's moments where you get to have a little joy, and that's okay too.
true.
This was just mostly interesting to me because of the fact that Kurt Vonnegut wrote a high school principal, just a high school principal, not wrote some big book. You know, he specifically wrote to him, and I don't even know if it was. I presume it had to have been read by him at some point because it became published somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or maybe Kurt left a copy of it for people to know, like, I sent him this. And he said, I think in the news articles I went through, he never responded. The principal never responded or said anything else about it. Once it was done until I think 1983 when the New York banning happened. Each time the banning was attempted, it was for, well, different reasons, really.
Because I could see some language. I could see because of the sex jokes in there. And I could also see religion a little bit because he talks a lot about Jesus and the Tralfamadorians in the same sentence. So I could see, like, he's getting rid of the glorification of God or something. And
Yeah,
probably
well.
a little bit about the violence, just because there are a lot of, not a lot, but a couple of like gory points. But again,
Well,
he
yeah.
covers up everything by saying, so it goes. If I had to see So It Goes one more time, he wrote it like in every paragraph. It's like, oh, that happened. Bummer.
Well, it's kind of true. I mean, it just happens that way. For him, he's looking at it from the perspective of it's already happened.
Yeah.
It's like you reliving something in the past that you can no longer change.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the future. And the thing I think is interesting, the character, what's his name? Billy Pilgrim. I think he, as a younger version of himself, started feeling that sensation of knowing the future. But it's hard to tell. I don't know. That's really kind of a personal decision, I guess, there.
Yeah. Did you know that there was a different title for the book, though?
Oh, no, I didn't.
It was initially going to be called The Children's Crusade, A Duty Dance with Death, but then it got changed to The Slaughterhouse Five.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes more sense, I think. Well, I don't know.
Well, he talks about the Children's Crusade a lot more in the book because he only brings out Slaughterhouse Five once, and it's like at the very, very end. So I think they were thinking that it would save some suspense. And Kurt Vonnegut compares the Dresden bombing with Hiroshima. He says that Dresden was worse.
Well, that's the thing. It was constant. It wasn't one single bomb. This is the same thing with the Tokyo firebombing. It wasn't one single bomb. It was a plethora of bombs being dropped.
Yeah.
You know, imagine an armada of flying vessels overhead dropping thousands and thousands of bombs. It wasn't just one single blast, it was constant.
Yeah.
The devastation was about the same. The amount of damage done as far as the space, the only difference is, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they suffered radiation. There was a lingering effect of even worse. But the sad thing is, all these big bombings that happened, I think they were in March of that year, maybe February or March, I don't remember, but they're in Tokyo and Dresden were done about the same time. Europe surrendered, I think, in May, just a few months later. And then Tokyo surrendered in, I want to say, August, because August is when they dropped the other bombs.
Yeah.
So all these massive bombings were undercut by two really, really big bombs. So, yeah, bombing people is horrible. What are you going to do?
True.
So it goes.
No.
Trauma.
Trauma. People need to go to therapy and not use sarcasm and satire to cut away from their grief.
I feel personally attacked.
Well, you should, because you gave that skill to me, and now I have to work through it.
It's a rough one. It's an interesting moment in history, and it does lead to the cascade of several other books that are burned, banned, thrown into piles. And I hate to say this is the one thing that, generationally speaking, is probably going to continue, because I don't think there's ever a time when people don't need to set books on fire. Why? It's the only way they can feel powerful about it.
Yep.
My best advice is keep writing books.
And keep reading books.
Both are very valuable.
Yes. And you can use your trauma to write more books.
Or go to therapy.
Or go to therapy.
For what you missed when you didn't exist, read a book.
Or write a book. Then go to therapy.